Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda. Kushak, choose what really matters.
The Quad's ambivalence could be its downfall, especially with a new kid on the block, AUKUS. Neither alliance has named China, neither the Quad nor the AUKUS. But with AUKUS there is more clarity. It is arming Australia with nuclear submarines. The reason is obvious: to patrol contested waters like the South China Sea, like the Taiwan Strait. Nuclear submarines can stay underwater for long periods, 30 years at a stretch. It's a clear challenge to China. Now compare this to the Quad. They're discussing climate change, they're talking about COVID-19, cybersecurity, nothing that directly concerns China. So the Quad's mission is still unclear, but that does not make it less important. Both these alliances are equally consequential. You'll hear a lot about them in the coming years. The question is, will they complement each other or will they compete for relevance? Now to answer this, we'll have to look closer at both alliances, their purpose, their plans, their sphere of operation. We'll start with the purpose. What is the Quad's purpose? Well, it's a mixed bag. From disaster relief to military exercises and now the Wuhan virus, you see most alliances are created for an objective. The Quad was not. Its agenda is evolving, adapting to new challenges, and this makes the Quad different, but also more effective, you could say. A rigid agenda can be counterproductive. Take the example of NATO. It was created to tackle the Soviet Union. That mission is over. The Soviet Union is over. So now the NATO is confused. It doesn't know its mission, its agenda. The AUKUS is very similar. Its purpose was categorically spelled out in the joint statement. Here's what it said. Through AUKUS, our governments will strengthen the ability of each to support our security and defense interests. So basically it's a military alliance, that's very clear. That's AUKUS. You won't see AUKUS producing vaccines or holding climate summits. It's all about militarization. Which brings us to strategies. Both alliances operate in the Indo-Pacific. Both are attempting to target China, but their approaches are different. The Quad is pitching itself as an alternative to the Chinese system. They're democracies. They embrace free markets. They follow international rules. The plan is to sway Pacific countries away from China. Well, how will they do that? First is vaccine diplomacy. It's very important. The Quad is producing 1 billion vaccine doses in India. They will be distributed across Southeast Asia. Right now, most of these countries use Chinese vaccines. The second important thing they're going to do is focus on supply chains and technology. The Quad is discussing 5G networks, semiconductors. China has monopolized both these sectors, 5G and semiconductors. The Quad wants to provide a stable and transparent alternative. Number 3 is infrastructure projects. China's Belt and Road has straddled Asian countries with debt. They're under a pile of Chinese debt. The Quad is discussing more sustainable projects, fairer projects, less debt, more progress, more development. That is the pitch that the Quad is making. AUKUS, though, has different plans. It wants to tackle China militarily, not just with nuclear submarines, but with long-range Tomahawk missiles and joint drills. So AUKUS is not about creating an alternative to China, it's pure military deterrence. The third factor is membership. Who are the members of these two alliances? The Quad has India, US, Japan and Australia. The AUKUS has US, UK and Australia. There is some overlap, but there are significant differences too. For starters, AUKUS has a non-Pacific member, which is Britain. Britain is an Atlantic nation. This interest in the Indo-Pacific is Boris Johnson's grand plan. He's talking about a global Britain, so he wants in on the Indo-Pacific. On the other hand, the Quad is made up of 4 Indo-Pacific countries. It's also more diverse. Japan and India give the Quad an edge. They can relate to the local culture. They have a long-standing history with the region. What about the AUKUS? It's basically an alliance of 3 Western societies. Australia may be located in the Eastern Hemisphere, but for all practical purposes, Australia is a Western nation. The US, the UK and Australia have been allies since the First World War. AUKUS is expanding that partnership to a new theatre, which is the Pacific. And talking about theatres, there is another key difference. The Quad focuses on the Indo-Pacific. The region has always existed, but its geopolitical meaning is recent, probably from the early 2010s. Before that, all the chatter was about Asia-Pacific. Now they're talking about Indo-Pacific. What is the difference? Indo-Pacific includes parts of the Indian Ocean. It leads right up to the coast of Africa. Asia-Pacific does not. It includes only that part of Asia that lies in the Pacific region. So for the Quad, this is not an issue. because India has direct stakes in the Indian Ocean. But that may not be the same for the AUKUS. None of their members are invested here. Guess who is? China. Experts say Africa is the next big flashpoint, and if that's the case, the Indian Ocean will start heating up. The Quad is there, the AUKUS is not. So what's the judgment? Will Quad and AUKUS compete, or will they complement each other? Well, as things stand, there is no scope for competition. These alliances have different objectives, different strategies, and they could work in tandem. AUKUS focuses on deterring China. The Quad builds an alternative for Pacific nations. It's a win-win for all sides, but a lot depends on the leadership, as in all cases, especially from the US and Australia. How invested are they in Quad? Today's summit is a good sign of Joe Biden's commitment, his pivot to the Asia-Pacific. There is no rule that two alliances cannot operate in the same theatre. Don't think of it as overcrowding. Think of it as more trouble for China. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.
Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda. Kushak, choose what really matters.